On this edition of That 3D Printing Channel, I'll be talking about Master Spools, what they are, how you can use them, and why I think they're a pretty good idea. So what is a Master Spool? Is it the actual spool here that you put this bundle of filament on? Is it this actual bundle of filament? Well, if you go on Push Plastic site, which I have to really recommend, they've been highly quality filament here that I've been using now. And you go on, you can look, and under the term Master Spool, you'll find these bundles of filament that you can get. And that's pretty much the whole deal. You 3D print or you acquire a spool like this, which is, you know, basically the ability to take one flange off, and then you order essentially filament bundles that go onto the spool. So really, if you wanted to ask which one of these is the Master Spool, together they're the Master Spool. You just get filament for your Master Spool. So take that at what you will with the terminology there. That's just kind of my interpretation of it. Now, why would you do this? Well, this is why. I have spools and I mean, these are just 3. I have like 10 sitting over in the corner that are just empty, nothing on them, or the last remains of a coil of filament, and those add up. That's just plastic that you can recycle it. You can throw that in your recycling bin, but that takes up a lot of space. I mean, that right there, you have to fit that in a box every time you want to ship filament. So what companies like Push Plastic do is they allow you to, not allow you, but you have the ability to get your coil of filament and put it on a Master Spool and reuse this guy many times over. So it's better for the environment in that, we're not just, creating more waste. I mean, we already use a lot of plastic in additive manufacturing, and this just helps cut some of that excess down. So how do we go ahead and use a Master Spool? Well, first you gotta load this sucker, right? You really don't want to be hanging out with coils just on your spool feeder or wherever you hang your filament. I suppose you could do that, but it's, going to unwind on you and it's going to make a mess. So we're going to put this onto our actual spool here. And when we do this, you'll notice some pretty neat things that Push Plastic has done to make this process a little easier. So first, let's take our spool, our filament coil, and you'll notice that they've put these in a triangular pattern here, or basically 1/3 a revolution apart, and that kind of matches these little cuts in our back flange here, and that's done for a reason. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these, and they're not super tight. We're going to rotate them out just like this, so that they're standing straight up. Now, I'm going to take my spool with the hub on it, and we'll set this on here like that. And you see, these guys fed right through on that other side. And it gives us a nice clear section over here to take the top flange. We'll put it on there, and you rotate it and lock it. So, again, we have our flange with the hub. We have our filament with the zip ties holding it secure. And then we're going to turn that over so that the zip ties face down. Go through those slots on the hub and put our flange on. There we go. So the next thing we do, we got to undo these zip ties. Push Plastic is awesome in that they give you these little reusable zip ties. They have this little tab here that you can push, and that way you can reuse these guys. And this is kind of important. One thing that you can do with these is you don't have to print off a whole bunch of these spools to store your filament on. You can, when you want to change to a different filament, come back in here, put these zip ties back on, zip them back down, and then undo it, take that off, and you can put your other roll on, and it's still secure. It won't unwind on you. So that's a really cool piece of functionality. Okay, so I've gone ahead and got this spool to the point where I can take this last zip tie off and it's ready to throw on the printer. The last zip tie that you want to take off is the one that's kind of holding that piece of your actual filament end in place. It's not a super big deal. If your manufacturer of the filament is pretty good about winding a nice, good spool to send off to you, it's not the worst thing to take them off in the wrong order. It'll uncoil itself a little bit, but you can just wrap that back. Obviously, you don't want to mix up the piece that's on the bottom, that's on the inner side of the spool, and try to start using that. Otherwise, you'll find that the filament doesn't feed real well. But once we take this guy off, and hopefully this will be easy here, you'll see, yep, it unspooled. I couldn't grab it fast enough there. But now this guy's ready to use, and let me just find that end. Oh, there we go, on my finger here. They do have a nice keep mechanism in it, just like your other standard spools have, so you can keep that ready to go. The only, I guess, change that I would like to see on this is more of these kind of keeper holes for the filament. So if they could just kind of spread that out all the way around the side, on each side, that would be a nice addition to, that way you didn't always have to wind up having to have the filament come out in one spot. This stuff does kind of float on that center hub. It doesn't grip it real tight, not like a real tight round spool that you would normally get. But that's how you can get this set up. One important key thing that I do want to let y'all know, because it didn't occur to me, is I went and set this in one of my filament dry boxes on a set of rollers that have the bearings and all, for nice smooth feeding into the printer. Well, that's going to end up being a problem with these. That is one of the drawbacks. The nice thing is it makes it really easy to put your zip ties back on and take them off with everything on the spool without having to try to handle all that loose filament. But it will not work with those roller type filament feed systems. So you're going to need to print yourself something like this, one of these filament stands. I like this particular one. I have that one set up to hold a 3 kilogram spool, so it's a little bit big, but that way you can just run right through the middle there and it'll feed off real nice, real easy. And it does kind of float on that hub, so I wouldn't really rely on that to help feed into your printer, but it will have a little less friction in that regard. So hopefully you learned a little about Master Spools and opened up your possibilities for filament purchases. I've been really enjoying these by Push Plastic. I'll leave a link in the description. They're not sponsoring me or anything, so they're just really good quality filament that I found, and I bought the Master Spooling after kind of reading on their site why they provide it, and I think it's a great option. It's probably going to be one of my primary options for using filament with my 3D printers. So thank you very much, and have a great day.